Beginning our Daf Mesech Yoma Daf Memtes, begin 12 lines down at the top of the Yomid. We continued the series of questions that we had brought in the Manik on the prior Daf, the questions of Rav Papa on these halachas of Chafina and of the Kemitza. Today's Daf, Ben Yehudis. Some of these we're going to discuss in today's Daf, like we mentioned, are these Boyer Papas, which we're ending off his questions about the laws of the Kemitza, which is by the flour offering that you have to take fistful, and chafina, which you have to take 2 handfuls. And specifically, we mentioned regarding the second chafina in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, which the chafina in the Kodesh HaKodeshim was from the Avodah Kasha Shebemikdash, from the most difficult avodas, where you had to get holding 2 hands. One hand was the hot coals, and the other hand was the spoon of the incense, and he had to somehow, holding it, spill it back into both his hands, which was handfuls of kataras. So the key terms of concepts are nimn and the moishchin yidein men. By the Karban Pesach, if you wanted to eat it, you had to be counted on it from beforehand. Additionally, you had to then go ahead, if you wanted to change, do an act of withdrawal, and the Gemara discusses exactly up until when that can be done. Opinion Petach Hamar is the halacha, the 6th parsha, regarding the firstborn we know as a sanctity. So then you have to go ahead and by the donkey redeem it, and if not, you have to go ahead and decapitate it. And our Gemara discusses the halacha of the pigeon. So we begin the Daf, 12 lines down to the top of the Yoma Daf and Testament out. So Rabbi Papa continues to ask questions on the halacha of chafina. It says like this, and this was the mnemonic of chaf and chaveroi. Chaf and chaveroi v'nosan tei chaf ma. What's the halacha if a fellow kohen goes and does the handfuls, and he puts it into his handful? What's the halacha? So what's the question? The halacha just says that he has to have a handful, and he has his handfuls. So it's there. Although he didn't go and actually spoon it out with his hands, but it fits the full handfuls. It says in the beginning of the pasuk, v'lakach. So v'lakach is also going on malay chafnav and b'halaka, and you don't have that because you didn't take malay chafnav. You got malay chafnav, but you didn't take it, so that it wouldn't be valid. Take it, let it stand. Which Taisa says, Taisa wonders, he says, well, did we ask this question already before by Bein Benayim? Bein Benayim, between the fingers, was the same thing. We wanted to know, you have Malay Chafna, fine, but you didn't take it, it just ended up being between the fingers. Was V'lakach, as Taisa explained, is V'lakach going on the Chafina or not? Was V'lakach only going on the Gachalim? So why asking the same question? So Taisa says, the question is what's called Imtim Tzalema. If you're going to say that between the fingers is not affected because it's no balakach at all, because it didn't come b'kayach gavra, because it fell in between your fingers by itself. You take what's inside your hand, but between the fingers it's not like you took. But over here, when you say that even though he didn't do the chafina, but it's coming from a kayach gavra, it's coming from a person, so maybe it'd be okay, and we would call it balakach, that it was taken by somebody and was put into the handfuls of the Kohen Gadol, and therefore then he would be able to go and bring it in, because or maybe no, but lakach is that you have to go ahead and the one who's bringing it has to do the lakicha. So therefore it's an imtim to like.
You have another problem because the first Kohen is a different size than the second
right.
and you don't have the
right. That definitely could be a problem. We're going to discuss that later on. It sounds like that it's going to be the same size as his hands. Right, yeah. So take a look at that. It's not clear what the halacha would be. Now the Gemara continues and says, Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. He has a similar type of a question. It says, Chafra no meis, but it's actually very fundamentally different because here it's not just someone else like scooping it out for you. Chafan, the Kohen Gadol does the chafina. Yom Kippurim, he's doing the chafina and he dies. So the question is, now we have to appoint another Kohen Gadol. Ma'ushe konas achar b'chafinasa. So this Ram discusses really could have said that he became tummy, but maybe there's a maybe talking about that where he died. Now the halach is what's with another one coming in with his chafina, the kind that takes over. Could he now just take that handfuls that the first one had put into the spoon, and he doesn't have to go ahead and do over the chafina? Again, which would be entering that question if it has to fit exactly into his hands, but could he use the same chafina or not? So Amr B'Chanina, he said to the students, and again, this next bunch of lines is like all just part of a narrative, and we're going to get back really to answer the question to the end of the Amid. But he says, Rabbi Shloimy made a comment to his students, say, says, look at the questions of the earlier generations. meaning the later generation merited to be as wise as the early generations. Meaning, what does that mean? As Rashi explains. I also asked this question, and now Rabbi Shloimy Levi, that's from the earlier ones, and he asked the question like what I asked. So the Gemara says, "Lamemad Rabbi Shloimy Levi kashas." Is that to say that Rabbi Shloimy Levi was older? But meaning, and he's saying that Rabbi Shloimy Levi is asking this question, and Reb Chanina was all excited. He said, "Oh, I had asked the kasha. I didn't realize that the earlier ones had asked the same questions." Is that to say Rabbi Shloimy Levi was older than Reb Chanina, and he was excited that Rabbi Shloimy Levi asked the same question he did? But if you remember, Rabbi Shloimy Levi had once said, "Li hit Reb Chanina lishtei shachalayim b'Shabbos." Reb Chanina permitted me to drink cress on Shabbos. So the Gemara jumps in. The Gemara is going to do a few jumping in, where it doesn't let you finish his sentence. Lishtois? Well, he let him drink shachalayim on Shabbos? Pshita, obviously. There's not with any Mishnah Masechet Shabbos. A person could eat any type of food item on Shabbos, even though it's going to be medicinal. And you could drink all types of liquids. Adam l'refuah, like the Bach adds on the words, you could drink a haisig lezel tea, you could drink a hot cup of tea, even though it's going to be therapeutic, because as long as it's a regular food item or it's a beverage that people usually drink, you're allowed to. So what's the chiddush of drinking the shachalayim? It's a regular thing that people eat. Tzedler rather says, no, what he let him was lishchik, l'lishta shachalayim Shabbos. He let him grind and then drink the shachalayim at Shabbos. So that was something that was a chiddush. No, but the Gemara jumps on that and says, "Hey, Chadami, well, I don't understand. What's the case? If there was danger to his life, so of course, it shouldn't even been a shaila. That's one of the main in the introductions and the roof in his book on emergency, on medical emergency on job. Right away, do it right away. So then, what's his whole question? Of course, you're allowed to. And if there's no danger, it's actually Mesa also. You're not like grind down Shabbos. You're not doing Teichel on Shabbos. So let's say, how could he even let him grind the cress on Shabbos? So the Gemara says, no, you're right. There was danger, and Reb Chanina told him to go ahead and do it. So then, so what was he asking him? His question was, Mimasya, is it therapeutic? The Neichel Alai Shabbat, that I should be Mechal Shabbos to do that, or is it not therapeutic? So therefore there would be no purpose of me Mechal Shabbos for it. So that was the question that he had asked him, and he told him that yes, it's therapeutic, and then he was allowed to be Mechal Shabbos to do that. So the Gemara said, but wait a second, why was he asking Chanina if it's therapeutic? He should be going to the doctor. He says, oh no, this Ruv, he was, not only did he know halacha, he knew medicine too. Chanina says, he says, no one ever asked me, Al-Makas prayed to Lavana regarding a wound from a white mule, and to live. It never survived. No, anyone came to me, asked me, what should I do? And to survive it. The Gemara says, we see that a person could get a wound from a white mule and still survive. And he says, the Gemara, no, meaning that the wound should heal. He never saw that such a wound would heal. So I will see that such a wound does heal. No, we're talking about where the mule is red, the chivrin reish kirayu coming in. We're talking about, but the ends of their heels, of the hoofs, are white. Those types of mules are very damaging, and that type of thing, he said, I never saw anyone get healed from such a wound. Okay, so that's why he had asked Reb Chanina. But one thing says the Gemara, but one thing we see, Reb Chanina was the elder, because obviously Rabbi Shloimy Levi was not the older, because he called Reb Chanina Reb Chanina. He says, Li hit Reb Chanina. Now, it wasn't the type for elderly, Rebbes to say on the Bachim a Reb. He would have said, Chanina permitted me. In other words, that he told me that it's medicinal and therapeutic. But in fact, he says, Reb Chanina, obviously Reb Chanina was the oldest. So you can't tell me Reb Chanina was excited. Reb Shloimy Levi was from the Rishonim who said, like he had asked, when Reb Chanina was the elder and not Reb Shloimy Levi. So Elahachkam rather says the Gemara, no, this is what Reb Chanina was telling to his students. Come and see that Sheilasam, the question of the later ones, of Reb Shloimy Levi, is Kasheila Shel Rishonim. It's like the questions of the early ones, like I had asked. That I'm from the early ones, and I also found a difficulty in this. And look, in the later generations, they're also struggling with they ask the same questions like I had asked. Now, says the Gemara, but the Gemara says, how did Reb Chanina really say this? Was he really in doubt? Like Reb Shloimy Levi, if another Kohen Gadol could come in with the same chafina that the first Kohen Gadol had made? But it's not possible. This Gemara is going to show, interestingly, why it's impossible. Reb Chanina said, says in the pasuk in the beginning of Achrei Mos, "Bezois Yova Aaron ala Kodesh b'par." With this, Aaron will come into the holy area, into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, and put him in that par. He comes with a bowl, he sprays the blood. Says Reb Chanina, you know what b'par means? And we're going to quote this on the Beis. V'loi b'domishal par. But now with the blood of the bull. Meaning, what does that mean? Of course you come with the blood of the bull. It means to say that if, let's say, the Kohen Gadol shechted the par, and the par died, so then, meaning, and the Kohen Gadol died. So then the one who takes the place of the Kohen Gadol cannot come in with that blood inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Rather, he has to bring another par and shecht it. You can't come in with just damishal par. You have to come in with a par. If you're becoming Kohen Gadol now and it's just dam, you can't come in. You have to have, when you were doing your avodah, a par. That's how he holds, as we'll see in the days. Now, since you have to bring, if the Kohen Gadol died, and you're taking over, you have to bring a new par. So I could prove to you that he would have to do another chafina after the shchita of his par that he has to bring, because V'amar B'chanina said, if let's say you do the handfuls of the Keteris before you shech the par of Yom Kippurim, you haven't done anything, because that's the Seder Avodas. We've gone through so far in this Masechta that we said what's the vidui on the par, and then he goes and he does the gairul, and then he shechts his par. Then he goes and he gets the coals and the Keteris. He goes inside, and as he's doing the Keteris, someone's mixing the blood of his par, and he comes back out and he gets the blood and he goes inside. So the order is that you're supposed to do the shechting of the par, and then to go ahead and do the Keteris. And says if you did it out of order, and you first did the chafina of the Keteris before the shchita, you haven't done anything. Oh, so wait a second. So this Kohen Gadol who did the chafina and then he died, it's not possible that he didn't shecht his par already, because you can't do the chafina before the shchita. You have to do the shchita of the par and then the chafina. So this new Kohen Gadol that's taking over, he has to bring a new par, because you can't do the chafina. I mean, you have to do a new par because he can't come in b'dam yishal par. You have to come in with a par. So if you're going to say he's going to use the chafina of the first Kohen Gadol, comes out that the chafina was before the shchita of the par of the second Kohen Gadol. You can't. You have to have the shchita of the par before the chafina. So obviously, you could prove that Chanina holds you can't use. So how could you say he had the same shayla? Obviously, he would hold that you would have to do a new chafina because you bring a new par, and you can't have the chafina before the par. So obviously, you're doing a new chafina. Says, but no, so you're right. Hachakam. This is what the B'chinim was saying. For the fact that Mishum Levi had this question, so then then you could prove that he holds not like me. The par, when it says in the Torah that Aaron's going to come with a par, is vafelu b'damishal par. Even with the blood of the par, meaning the next Kohen Gadol who takes over after the first one shechted and died does not have to bring another par. Oh, so if that's the case, then the Torah is that the first Kohen Gadol had taken a handful before shechting his par. Meaning, ulamai the svirle, and according to what he holds, that it's okay, you could come with the dambu par. So then, sheilosik is sheilos rishayim. Then his question is like the question of the early ones, meaning like those who disagree with me regarding the par, that they hold that you could even come with damishal par. According to them, is according to whom you could ask such a question, because you're not having the chafina before the par. You shechted the par, you did the chafina, and then you died. Now the next Kohen Gadol, that's a valid question. Could you use that original chafina? According to Chanina, you can't ask the question because according to him, you have to bring a new par, because you can't use Dal Mishal par. You have to have that when you were the Kohen Gadol, you were bringing a par. So if you're doing now with the shchita, obviously you can't use this chafina because the chafina has to be after the shchita. But according to those who disagree with me, sheilas rishayim, meaning according to the rishayim, the early ones, like my colleagues, who disagree with me, and they hold no, you can't be with Dal Mishal par, so you're not doing the shchita over it. So maybe you could use the originals chafina or not. So therefore, that's the question. My havala. So the Gemara says, not like Reb Chanina, if the first Kohen Gadol does the chafina and he dies, could the next Kohen Gadol come and use his chafina or not? So Amar Papa, he says it depends. He says like this. He says meaning if we're going to resolve the question that we're going to shortly quote, that you have to go ahead and regarding doing a chafina, taking your handfuls again inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim or not. And you're going to say that in the Kodesh HaKodeshim you have to go ahead and you get into your handfuls again. So then Chaver Nichnas B'Chafinasi. So that's what Papa. Then the second Kohen Gadol could come in with the first Kohen Gadol's original chafina. You know why? You're going to do over a chafina again in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So you'll have a chafina by the second Kohen Gadol. Again, you don't have to do it over. Meaning, forget about Chanina. Chanina, we proved that you can't ask the question. If you don't hold, you could come with Dam Shel Par. So you already had a chafina, and you already had the Dam Shel Par. Okay, we're done with that. Now you have a chafina. Question is, can you use his chafina or not? So saying, okay, if you chayz v'chayfen, so you could use his chafina because you're anyway doing your own chafina in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So why not? Why can't he use his chafina? I'll explain in one moment. But if you hold that you don't do another chafina inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim, you just do one time taking your handfuls and you put into the spoon, and that spoon you're going to pour onto the gacholim, onto the coals. So then you have to ask. So the way the Teish Yishalm says it is that the question is could you use the first Kohen Gadol's or do you need to do your own? So that's the way he explains it. But Teish doesn't understand. He says, I don't understand. If it's an obligation to do chafina 2 times, as the Masechet of the Gemara will be, one inside, one outside, so how are you bringing with the other Kohen Gadol's chafina? Lamaisa, one Kohen did not do it 2 times. So how is that helping? So he says that the explanation is that what the Gemara means to say, if you chayfen b'chayzo, chayfen means that since Minat Torah there's no set amount, that you can do chafina as many times as you want to, as long as you don't have too much or too little of the keteris in your hands. You just got to make sure you got your handfuls exactly as the amount's supposed to be. So that's where the Rabbanu are masakin that you should be chayzo b'chayfen inside, meaning because maybe it happened that some of the keteris fell out on your way as you were walking and you're missing. So therefore, if you take the handfuls and you put into the spoon, and then the Kohen Gadol dies on the outside, then the other Kohen Gadol takes over, is going to do it a second time, meaning outside. And then he's going to go ahead and put it into the spoon and go in, where then you're going to have Malech Chafna Vehevi, where you only could bring it in one time. Because Chayfen v'chayfen, the Lamdas Taisa says, means to say you can do as many times as you want to. So then, the other Kohen Gadol will also do it again outside before he goes in. But if you hold Ein Chayfen v'chayfen, meaning you don't do it a second time, you don't have this avodah kasher to make this. You don't do it again inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim. You only do it one time outside. That's because Malech Chafnav means, one time the Torah says Malech Chafnav, not 2 times. So if that's the case, so then the other Kohen Gadol who takes over cannot come in with that other one's chafina, and he can't do chafina again because already was done chafina. That's how Taisa explains the Gemara's question. If you're chayf, there's a few different ways I've explained it, but just to go back to the simple understanding, Rav Papa is saying that if you're chayfin b'chayfin, so then the other Kohen Gadol could take over because he's going to do it a second time himself inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim, so he'll have a chafina. But if you say you don't do it over. So the question is, could I use his chafina inside? To which the Gemara brings it. Amalei Rav Huna Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg Papa. He says, no, to the contrary, I'll say exactly the opposite. If the halacha is that the Kohen Gadol, he does a chafina once outside from the big shovel of where all the keteris is, and he does a chafina, and then he does it again inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim, then lo yikon sachem b'chavanah. And this is what someone was bringing up the whole time. No, then you cannot do someone else with the same chafina because he actually has some is what you bring up the whole time. How can I use his chafina? Onto the hands is nicht zelba. I can't have any more or any less than my handful. If I'm using his handfuls, we don't share the same exact size hands. So how am I going to use it for Ket? If you're chayfin, then it's a problem. If like the Gemara says, you could ask the question if you don't do it again. So you could say, okay, malay chafna. Es gemein zanach malay chafna. Nicht man malay chafna, but it's malay chafna. We can just nutzen. But if I have to do it over again, I have to put it back in my hand. So it's not going to be exact. That's what you bring up the whole time. So that's what he says exactly opposite of Papa. He says, no. You could. They both agree the question could be asked, but regarding chayfin, Rav Papa said that then for sure you could, and he says, no, in that case for sure you can't, because it's not going to be exactly precise. And you're going to run into the problem if you're putting it back into your palms in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, you might just be a little bit too little or a little too much. And therefore, that they're both saying the question would only be if you're not chayf mechayz b'chayfen. So what's this handler rai if you're chayfen v'chayz b'chayfen or not? It says who could we have the following question? Chayfen, you do your handfuls like the Torah tells you of the getaris that was daka and adaka from the shovel of all the getaris. But chayz b'chayfen, do you go back now when you're in the kodesh because again you put into a spoon to the bezach and you're walking into the kodesh. Now when you get there, what do? Do you pour it back into your palms so you have malay chafnav? No, you just pour it straight from the spoon onto the gachon. So the Gemara said Tashma actually the Gemara brings a raya that you are chayfin v'chayz b'chayfin from the halacha of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said that he has to take malay chafnav. We said kachayis midas. We said whether you have big hands or small hands, it's according to the size of your hands. It says that was its measurement. It says my love, what does it mean that was his measurement? Isn't that to say kishem shemidasim b'chutz? Just like that was the measurement that from the outside had to be malay chafnav. Kach midasam and that was the measurement from the inside, meaning you have to go ahead and put it back into your palms to do it malay chafnav. So no, it's not a raya. Dilma maybe she'imratzalas is mida isa. Maybe means to say that if this was its measurement, if you wanted to make an actual measurement and take your measurements of your hand and they're going to go ahead and configure how much that is, you can make a measurement for that. You don't have to use your actual hand itself. Which, if you recall, that was what the Gemara had asked there and said, oh, you bring a raya. You said, no, it could be this. And we said, no, this could be that. Or Yinami, another approach to translate kachais and midas. I mean, shouldn't have any less or any more, meaning that kachais and midas, meaning that was the measurement. It's got to be exactly that size, not more, not less. But it's not a raya that you have to do it again inside. So the Gemara says, Tashma, here the Gemara brings a conclusive proof. And he thinks on the base. So, what does he do the second time around when he's doing the chafina, which you see obviously from the words of the Brisa right away that he's doing another chafina, he's doing another handful in the Kodesh HaKodeshim from the spoon into his palms. Which, again, like we said, he was coming in with the right hand, had the coals, left hand had the ketaris. So he puts the coals down. Now he's got, in his left hand, he has all the ketaris. Now how does he do to get that ketaris back into his hands where it has to be his handful? There's no one can help you. It's like one of these trivia. You know what I'm saying? The guy walks in, he has in his hand all the guitars, and he's got to get it into his handfuls. No one can pour it in. So what does he do? So it says the Brisa, what he does is like this. He holds on to it. There's a few different ways that we should not interpret this, but he grabs a hold of the spoon with his fingertips, meaning after he put the coals down on the ground, so he has the handle of the spoon that's between his arms, and he lifts up the spoon with his fingertips. Some say beshina with his teeth, which Tais on the previous Daf discussed. I thought you don't use your teeth. Tais differentiates between if it's just walking in with your teeth or just manipulating with your teeth, but it's still being supported by your arms. But either way, he takes his two thumbs and he lifts up the handle of the spoon with his thumbs towards his body, little bit by little bit, meaning he's pulling it back. Remember, he's holding with the handle. He's got to pull the handle back till he has the spoon achmagas, until the end of the spoon reaches that lebein tzili yadav, between his the end of the spoon. It comes between his shoulders, so that makes that he has the spoon basically now in the palm of his hands. He was inching the handle back. He's pulling it backwards, right? He wasn't holding the spoon part. He's holding the handle part. He's pulling it back with his fingers, pulling it back so that he has now the actual bowl part of the spoon in his hands. Now, what he does now is now he goes and he turns it through the side into his palms. So essentially, and again, there's different ways of explaining Rabbi Shloimy, he had to manipulate the spoon backwards and then flip it over into his hands. Or V'yashem B'shina, but some say that he was using his teeth, but he had to flip it over back into his hands. That was the avodah that he had to do a chafina again. And then B'tzayvra, then he would gather on the coals all the ketores, meaning after you have it in his hands, he could spill it into the coals. So that it should take a while till it starts smoking because it's piling up, choking the fire. Some say no, actually mefaz, you would actually spread it out, scatter it out on the coals. So that it actually should start smoking very quickly. So that's machlek is exactly how he did that. Says the Brisa, this was a difficult avoid. This was the difficult avoid in the Beis Hamikdash to be able to manipulate, get exactly his handfuls with holding the bowl, the spoon, and be able to tilt it to get it back and tilt it over into his hands. Says Zuhi Besula, when this is the most difficult one and nothing else. Ivoka Malika is the cutting of the bird's neck as a shchita with your thumb. V'ka Kamitza is taking the fistful, which we said that when you have the machavas and macheshes, which are already baked, and you have to be able to get exactly a fistful. So Gemara says, no, you're right, it's not the most difficult one. It's from the most difficult ones. There are other ones too. Which Taisa actually explains an interesting contradiction. There's other places that it says differently. And Taisa says that here when we're saying these three are avodah kasha, means say because it's tsar, it's difficult, it's painful for the kohen gadol, for the kohen. Malika is because he has to take his thumb and cut through the backbone, the spine of the bird. Kamitz is also hard because the kohen gadol, the kohen has to go ahead and it's a hard, you're already baked. It's painful, right? It's difficult to be able to crack that off and smooth it out. And so too by the chafina, where we're saying that he's taking the bezach in his teeth. So that, and also we said that he shouldn't get burned from the heat of the coals. But other places when this is kasha, means it was just difficult to do, but it wasn't painful. Here, Tais explained these things was that by the kasha, but Tais learns it is that because it was painful, it had some tsar to doing this avodah. Now, but one thing says the Gemara, obviously Shema Mina, what we have obviously inferred from this is chayfen v'chayfen v'chayfen Shema Mina. Obviously that we see from this brisa clearly that you don't just take the handful one time and put it into the spoon and then pour it straight onto the gechalim. We see obviously that you do the chavina and you do it again inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim, which is one of the avodah kasha shed of. Now the Gemara continues with the machlekes that a question that we had quoted on Amen Aleph in passing with Reb Chanina, but it's a very similar question as the one of Chafan of Meis. What happens if the Kohen Gadol shechted his power, he slaughtered the cow, and the mace, and the bull, and he died? So could another Kohen Gadol take over and just use the blood and continue where the first one left off? What's the question? Do we say when it says in the pasuk in Achrei Mais, Bipar with the bull means even with the blood of the bull? I didn't know Bipar means and not the blood of the bull. It means it has to be the blood, the whole bull. You can't bring in someone's second hand where you coming just with the blood. You have to come with the bull. So it's a machlekes. Chanina, who we quoted on the Aleph, that was where we had quoted Reb Chanina, that we said obviously he couldn't have asked the question of chaf and the mace, because if you're chaf and the mace, you obviously have to have the par shechted before the chafina, because he holds the avodah is ma'akim, and he said that obviously the second Kohen Gadol is going to have to do his own chafina because he has to bring his own bull, because he holds this opinion of Chanina bepar v'lebedam shapar. He holds it has to be you have to bring your own bull and not you can't bring someone else's blood of the bull. Rish Lakish disagrees, no, he said, and he was the Rishonim that Rabbi Shloimy was obviously asking according to, which he goes, no, the bull or even the blood of the bull. Again, we see a few disagreements. The no, the blood and not the bull and not the blood of the bull. No, the bull and even the blood of the bull. Which Eitz Rabbi, and that's what we're quoting that they also disagree, because actually they're the ones who try to bring rayas not like the other one. Reb Ami asks, meaning to prove, like he holds, that you cannot bring Damei Shopar. He asks Rabbi Yitzchak Nafka from Mishnah Mesechta Pesachim. What's the Mishnah Mesechta Pesachim? It says that Nimnin, you could be counted on the Karban Pesach if you want to be counted on one, which you have to be if you want to bring a Karban Pesach. And you could also withdraw from being counted on one if you want to withdraw. Only until it's slaughtered. After that, it's already too late. But says Rabbi, a very interesting question. It says, Vim Isa, if it's true like you, that after slaughtering and you have the blood, you still call it al haseh, because you say b'par means afal b'dam par. So you call it par with dam too. So then, if the seh is still a seh when you have just the blood, so then achi yizr min boile. you should be able to withdraw or be counted to be al haseh even after the shechita, as long as you didn't do the zrika, the blood is still there, and you hold the blood is like the thing itself. Well, that says, Yitzchak, he says, no, Shani Hasan, there it's different. You're right, usually it would be like that, but there it's Xeris HaKasa, because the Chsiv, the Pasuk says, it says, V'yimet habayis. It says that if, let's say, the ones who are counted are coming to diminish and withdraw themselves from the family, it says, Miyois miseh, from being on this set, meaning, Miyois is a terminology of Havayasai. Havayasai means Havaya, it means existence. As long as the thing exists, then you could diminish yourself, which means Mechiyusi deseh, when the seh is alive, and not when it's shecht. So therefore, don't ask for me from over there. There's a clearly Xeris HaKasa, has to be still alive. But Mazut asks another question. This is from a Mishnah Masechtas B'chayos. Mishnah says, Ein paidin, you cannot redeem a Peter Chamor, which is the firstborn donkey, has to be either redeemed with a sed that's given to the Kohen, or you have to decapitate it, you have to cut off its head. So that says the Mishnah, you cannot redeem the firstborn donkey, loy be'egel, not with a calf, loy be'chayin, not with a wild animal, and the reason is because the Torah says it has to be with a sed, with a lamb, so it can't be a calf, it can't be a wild animal. Loy be'shchuta, it can't be with a slaughtered one. Loy be'treif, it can't be if it has a moral defect. Loy be'klayim, it cannot be a mixed breed, which is, even if they're both sides, the mother and the father are seh, but if the father is an aiz, which is a male goat, and the mother's a rachel, which is a female sheep, that wouldn't qualify because it's climb, it's a mixed breed, even though they're both seh. You cannot redeem with a koi. A koi is also, the father is a male goat, and the mother is a female deer, which is half chaya, half behema. Rather, it's got to be with a seh, with sheep, with something that's exactly a direct that of a sheep. Now, one thing is that we see is that the Mishnah said, "B'lei b'shchuta." You can't use a slaughtered sheep. Obviously, that when it's shchuta, when it's shechted, even though you have the dam, it's not seh. But why? According to you, you said par is dam, so seh should also be dam. Should be able to redeem with the seh, with its dam, with shchuta. So he says, no, Shani Hassan, yeah, you're right, but there it's different again also, because the Yov says Semi Pesach. He says, we learn at Xeris Shava, where it says the word seh by the Pidyon by the Chamor, it says seh by Karban Pesach, just like by Karban Pesach, we have Xeris HaKasa that says that it cannot be shchuta, because that's to be miyois miseh mechiyus lezeh. So over here, when it says seh, it means when it's alive and not shchuta. The Gemara says, wait a second. If you're comparing the making Xeris Shava, the Pidyon by the Chamor, to that of the Karban Pesach, so then go all the way. Just like over there by the Karban Pesach, it's got to be a zachar, it's got to be a male, it's got to be tam, it's got to be unblemished, it's got to be a ben shad, it's got to be within the year. So not come. And also opinion by the Chamor should require it to be zachar, a male, and tam, and unblemished, ben shad, and in the first year we know it's not the halacha. So you want to know tam alema because the pasuk says tifte riba. If you look at the pasuk over there, it says 3 times. It says more than once the word tifte to tell you that we're making ribuyim, that what you could redeem is more than just what would be the limited, narrow interpretation of the Xeris Shava to Karban Pesach. So wait a second, if the word redeeming is coming to include afil kulanami, then even all of the problems of Karban Pesach should be included, meaning even if it's shchuta. That'd be the case. And what would the Xeris Shava be teaching me? Obviously, it's telling me that it is limited to something Karban Pesach. So therefore, it's somewhere in the middle, which is it's mamayit that of shchuta, but it's going to be including other things that it doesn't have to be zachar, tam, uben shad. The Gemara is going to continue on the next daf this discussion regarding if par is even b'damishal par or not b'damishal par. So we're going to discuss in today's daf, in Yoma Daf test. We continue with the questions of Rav Papa. And we said, what happens if Chafin Chaveroi, his friend did the Chafin, and he puts it into his handful. So the question is, on the one hand, you do have Maloi Chafna, so that would work. Or do you say that no, Balakach is going also not only on the Gechom, it's also going on the Chafin, and you have to actually go ahead and do the Chafin yourself. That was one question, and we said take. Another question was, let's say the Kohen Gadol does the Chafina. So it's not just someone else doing it for you, he's actually doing the Chafina and then he dies. The question is, could the other Kohen Gadol come in with his Chafina? Which the Gemara proved through a discussion that obviously the one who's asking, you have to say he holds that the power is even bedamishal power, and not like a chanina. Why? Because if not, they would come out that the chafina is before the shchita of the power, because you got to go ahead and do another shchita because you can't use the first one's down. And the problem with that is that if you're using his chafina, then his chafina is going to be before the shchita the par, and Chanina is clear that that's ma'akid. You can't do chafina before the shchita. The par shchita has to be before the chafina the ketaris. So obviously, the one who's asking holds that you don't have to bring a new par. You could use his done. Oh, okay, fine. So the par is coming before the chafina, and then he's asking, fine. Forget about the order. The order's not a problem, but could you use his chafina? No. So Rabbi Papa held that if you do chafina again inside the Kaddish HaKadoshim, okay, then he could come in with it. Because ultimately, you're going to have a chafina of your own in the Kaddish HaKadoshim. But if not, then that's where you could ask the question, I'm not sure what the halach would be. According to Rav Huna ben Yeshua, he says the opposite. No. If you do chafina again in the Kaddish HaKadoshim, then he cannot come in with it. Because you can be having a little bit less or a little bit more. If not, then you can ask the question. Which the Gemara said that, wait a second, so it sounds like we're not sure if you're chayfin, b'chayz, b'chayfin. So he said, you can't prove this from our Mishnah. When the Mishnah says, kachayz midasa, it doesn't mean, that's how you do it again inside, because you could just say that no, if you want to make a midah, it's something you can make an actual measuring kit that fits the size of your hands, or it just means that you shouldn't have any more, any less. It has to be, that's the measurement. But the proof was ultimately brought from a brisa. The brisa said that this was a way to kasher shabemikdash, which obviously was your chayz v'chayvin. That's why it's so difficult. You have to get the spoon that you were holding in your hand into your hand should be full with the ketayras, which obviously is very difficult because you guys somehow have to get it out of your hands and then pour it back into the two hands. But obviously that does indicative of the proof that you're chayz v'chayvin. Now then we got into machlekes, or a similar question regarding par, which was, let's say that he's shachat umes. So the question was, so when bezoysiv aron bepar, is that also bedamishal par? So it's okay, I could use his shchita, or no, it has to be with a par. So the Gemara says there's no raya from the Korban Pesach, which we said that you can't count on or get withdrawn after the shchita before the zrika. Why not? It's still set. If you hold bedamishal par, it's a bedamishal set. Yeah, because there's exists a kasam. It says miyois miseh, which tells mechiyusa to say has to still be alive. And also, there's no raya by pidyon pet chamor. Over there, why can't you use a shchuta? Okay, that's because we learned that says of a Pesach that it's not going to be by a shchuta. Just like B'Korban Pesach, so too will be here. So then why doesn't it have to be Tam and Zachar and Ben Shana? Oh, because tifta says more than once tifta, it's being mariboy, that you don't have to have Zachar, Tam, Ben Shana, and then one Kuran. Things like the Gemara says, no, because then what are you doing with the Gzei Zakazim? Says that, obviously we're including certain things and excluding certain things, and we're excluding from Seh that it can't be a shchuta, but we're including from tifta all the other things. Thank you to any time, I host things.